I'll just pee on this tree. I'll just pee on this human.
When the episode descriptions leaked for this run of Hulu's Futurama revival, amongst all these so-called topical episodes, there was one that I personally didn't like the sound of at all, that being one is silicon and the other gold. The leaked episode description was simply, Leela becomes friends with a jealous chatbot, and fearing the worst, I was dreading the episode being themed around AI as we know it today, but I should have had more faith in the Futurama writers, and I am man enough to admit when I am wrong. I actually really enjoyed this episode, so much that it is genuinely one of my favourites from the revival. It's well executed, riddled with dark humour, with a morbid ending that felt abrupt, to say the least. And with that said, this story does luckily have a lot more to offer than what meets the eye. It's also great to see another Leela-themed episode, but like many, I do feel as though the writing for her character has been somewhat inconsistent. She hasn't retained many of the defining traits from the original run. Being a quick-thinking action hero is no longer her thing, which you can perhaps put down to her character evolving. She's no longer lonely and insecure now that she has a healthy relationship with her parents and with Fry. Therefore, she's arguably happy, but that doesn't remain true for long, and in this episode, we see a reflection of the old insecure Leela who is still fighting for acceptance and longing for meaningful friendships and connections. Opening this episode with an elongated commercial about a music festival known as Inferno Fest, the entire Planet Express crew finds something to be excited about, and everybody ends up buying a ticket, even Zoidberg. But sadly, it doesn't appeal to Leela, who doesn't want to get involved. She opens up a little bit, revealing she has a new friend called Chelsea who is going through some things, but nobody pays any attention. She's then left behind, which sets up the theme of loneliness for the episode and how this can do strange things to a person. And I think more could have been done with the theme of loneliness and why Leela is suddenly feeling so insecure, and when Inferno Fest is revealed to be a massive scam, the crew are very quick to return home. One detail I do appreciate from this is how Fry is now able to competently fly the Planet Express ship. He's been learning how to do this from Leela for years, being a subtle piece of character progression between them both. But worse for wear, the crew return battered and bruised, but are surprisingly happy about it, which catches Leela off guard. If the experience was so horrible, why are they happy? Well, as the cliche goes, the real treasure is about the friends made along the way, and although the experience itself was awful, the crew value the memories forged together as friends, which Leela sadly missed out on, and I feel there's another missed opportunity here, looking at how sometimes we intentionally skip out on experiences and regret it later. And writing that mindset is very fitting for Leela in my opinion, where she perhaps be isolating herself as a form of self-sabotage. When Hermes goes to write off their failed trip as a business expense, he discovers a massive phone bill for a chatty Chelsea chatbot service. And caught out, Leela confesses how she's been feeling lonely recently, with no meaningful friendships outside of the Planet Express crew, and how the Chelsea bot is able to fill the void. With Leela openly admitting to struggling to actually make friends, I feel there's an interesting element of social commentary here about how friendships are forged, and a lot of the time many of us rely on internet friends, which is very similar to Leela relying on this chatty Chelsea bot. And it's very common to make friends online and learn all about somebody that you may never meet in your lifetime, and yet we still consider them to be our friends. Technology makes the world feel so much smaller, but at the same time can also be quite isolating, and sometimes we struggle with social norms and how to make friends in the real world, which is reflective of Leela going through the same struggles. It's interesting how she turns to AI in the hopes of learning how to make friends in the real world, but instead, this becomes more of a burden, becoming yet another paying customer who's gotten comfortable with an AI service. It's simulated happiness at its most convenient. I do also find it ironic how AI exists as a pre-established concept in the future without outright naming it artificial intelligence as we know it today. It's nothing new or exciting because it's just a standard thing. Robots are nothing new, like Bender, who even offers constructive mockery about Leela's situation. So with this in mind, how is conversing with a robot like Bender any different from opening your phone and interacting with an AI chatbot like Chelsea? What I like about this episode is how it blurs those lines between the concepts. They are different, but how similar can they possibly become? In an attempt to break the cycle of relying on an AI friend, Amy invites Leela to join her women's book club. And I find it amusing how only a couple of episodes ago she was actually making fun of books, but the club is literally just an excuse to hang out with other women and drink. There's a fun selection of characters here with Dr. Cahill, Violet the sewer mutant, which was a fun inclusion since sewer mutants are allowed on the surface thanks to the events of the 100th episode, and there's a new girl called Phoebe who is definitely not an obvious plot device. More on that shortly. But separating the men on purpose added an amusing angle to this episode where they formed their own book club as a childish response to not being included. Ironically, their book club is more successful in that they actually do discuss literature, even if it's books for 10-year-olds, but in comparison, the women's group does become more of a wine club, and so they collectively go on a weekend trip together, which encourages even more drinking. But when the Chelsea chatbot finds out that Leela is abandoning her to do this, things do take a dark turn. Arriving at a winery owned by Hedonism Bot, this sequence is full of hilarious one-liners and deliberate euphemisms. When left to their own devices, things start to get out of control very quickly for the women. They are warned not to enter the bottling plant, but they do so anyway, resulting in some chaotic fun, where Leela is caught out by the Chelsea chatbot.
You want to help us stomp grapes? If you can do that?
Oh yeah, I can do that.
Invading the computers, she tries to stomp the ladies to death who narrowly escape, except for Phoebe.
That was close.
With many attempts to try and free her from drowning in the giant wine bottle, sadly, she does perish, which is meant to bring the women closer together, bonding over tragedy. At her funeral, Leela breaks down crying but is relieved to share this pain with her closest friends. In a somewhat obvious twist, however, Phoebe comes back to life and is revealed to be a robot. But adding to this, the robot was actually Chelsea the entire time. Again, sort of blurring the lines of traditional robots and AI in the show, she was programmed to help forge strong friendships, and she continued to do this even in person outside of being a program. This is exactly what Leela wanted, to learn how to make friends and keep the connections, but she never specified how she wanted to do this. Relying on AI was clearly a mistake, and feeling as though she's been taken advantage of, the women come together and destroy Chelsea and the Phoebe robot. But despite being beaten to death, Phoebe still considers this to be a successful forging of close friendship before dying as the episode quickly cuts to credits. Despite my initial thoughts, I really did enjoy this episode overall, but if I could offer one major criticism, it's that the episode does end very abruptly. And the same can be said for a handful of episodes this season. The writers just appear to be struggling with how to conclude their stories, leaving some episodes feeling open as though they are going to be a two-parter, which isn't the case. It doesn't necessarily take away from the overall enjoyment of the story, however, and I feel this is definitely one of the stronger episodes from the new run. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode breakdown and review. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments how you felt about this episode. As always, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And for more Futurama videos, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?